Hello again, and thanks for joining me on this channel. So today we have this Hornby model. It's number R2882 and it represents a class 3F 060 steam locomotive. It's in the S and DJR livery. Now I don't know what railway that is, I've not heard about it before, so I'm going to look that up on the internet and add it to this video now. Now, although I got this model secondhand, you wouldn't believe it from the condition of the box. It looks like it's brand new and it might actually never have been used, this model. So it's going to be quite interesting to open this up and take a look. So we're going to do that today. So here we have this Hornby model out of the packaging and ready to have a look at in more detail. So the small 060 steam locomotive is pretty much a mainstay of model railway collections because its smaller size is more suited for obviously smaller model railways, and most of us have layouts which are smaller than we'd ideally like them to be. So we often have to revert to small engines like this one. Ideally suited for hauling small freight trains, these locomotives can also do Stirling work, doing shunting duties in the yards as well. So with such a huge range of options available to you, should you consider to buy this model? Well, let's have a look at this in more detail and we can find out. So first impressions of this locomotive is that the blue colour that the body is moulded in is actually quite an attractive dark blue colour, and it's accented with some black additional parts and painting down here, for example. This model is made in China, and Hornby are very good at getting manufacturers that make really good models and paint them very well as well. You can see that the red applied to the buffer beam here is very crisp here at the corner. There's no fuzziness or bleed over there, and also the black as well has been applied very well. So here at the buffer beam, there's not really any detail. There's a hole here. Normally you have a bag of extras that contain two vacuum pipes which fit in here, and you also normally get a driver and fireman. But that seems to be missing from this box, so perhaps this is second-hand after all. I've got a feeling this is maybe brand new, but missing those parts, I'm not sure whether that's because this is a railroad model and it's just a cheap option to not include them, or maybe they've got lost at some point in the past. So obviously you have these buffers here. They're not sprung, but they are made of metal, so that looks really quite impressive. But then you have this huge big Hornby coupling at the front, and it's attached to the chassis with this screw, so you can remove it and possibly put in a different type of coupling or add some additional detail onto the buffer beam, but there's no NEM pocket for easy swapping with some other type of coupling. So at the front of the boiler there's a lot of nice rivet detail around here, as well as this extra part that's been moulded and added on. The front of the boiler here has this door which looks very convincing. It looks as though it could open, but it doesn't on this model, and it has the number 24 printed on there. But you can see it's slightly off centre, it's printed a little bit too low, and that's quite unusual for Hornby for that to happen. Their standards are normally quite high. So looking down the side of the model, it's got this additional handrail on this side which has been added on. That's a piece of wire through two plastic brackets. And further down you can see the SDJR printed on the side here. That's very clear and nicely done. There's also these numbers up here on the side of the cab, number 24 down here in the bunker, and also a shed plate printed on the side as well. And looking around the back here we have another shed plate, and there's indications moulded into the main body of these lamp brackets. They're quite convincing. They are moulded in one piece. In the centre here you have a little tab. That's holding the chassis to the body, so that's a compromise for this model. Further up you've got a representation of coal. That's not very impressive. And also moulded into this piece of plastic are this representation of metal bars here. That's actually quite a nice piece of moulding, but they've really not done very well on the coal. You can see the windows here have glazing on them and these bars moulded into the plastic, so that's quite convincing. It does look like they would be metal bars on the windows, but they're actually just one piece, but that's quite good. And you can also see inside the cab here that it has some moulded detail on the boiler there. And you can also see that the front windows are glazed, and the glazing doesn't really intrude into the cab area much at all. So they've done really well on those windows. Looking here at the front of the cab, you can see a little bit of difference here where this plastic doesn't marry up just quite right to the other part. I guess they've reduced quality here for the sake of cost, but they have added in these metal parts here for the whistle. Up on the roof, there's not a lot of detail. It's possibly prototypical that there isn't a lot of detail up here on the roof either. But we do have some detail here where you can see the water filler hatches and some rivet detail as well. Up on top of this dome, there seems to be some kind of moulding mark, I think. I don't think that's prototypical. If it is, it just looks a little bit odd. So looking further down at the running gear, you've got a brake block here in line with the wheel. Now that's really well done. It's so close to the wheel and yet the wheel moves freely. And you can see that they're connected with this simple conrod. And there's other brake blocks in line with the wheels and some rivet detail as well. And down this end of the locomotive, there's nothing really underneath the cab, but it does have these steps coming down from the cab. So we do have some really nice detail on here and probably some basic detail as well. So it's a nice mix actually for something that's a railroad model. Looking underneath, you can see that drive goes to the center wheel. All three wheels have flanges on them, but it looks like the middle one is the one that's driven, but the conrods will move the two outer wheels as well. No traction tires on these, and this model does have a bit of weight to it, but it's not going to haul a very long train, but that's probably prototypical. So let's see how this runs. So here it is on the test track, so let's give it some power and see what happens. So it runs not too bad. To begin with, it looked as though it was going to be a bit stuttery and not really get going. But then once it started to go, it was quite smooth. It did get stuck on the transition when it went from one curve to the other. And I'm not sure whether that's maybe because it's just like brand new and it needs run in, or maybe it's just not picking up that well from the wheels. But either way, it's running not too bad. It's not the best model in the world, but then I guess you've got to think about the price point. Anyway, let's open this up and we'll have a look at the mechanism inside. So there are no screws holding this model together. It's a simple plastic clip fit that's holding the two parts together here. That's quite a neat arrangement that the Hornby designers have done in order to keep the price low on this model. So to get it apart, you just unclip it from the back here. We saw the tab earlier. So this chassis, I think, has been the star of many of Hornby's 060 locomotives. And it's quite a simple affair, but it works quite effectively. You've got the motor here in the centre driving this middle wheel, and you've got a couple of resistors at the top, and you can see that pickup happens on the front and the rear wheels with these little wipers here. There is a screw here in order to take the motor out if you need to, but this one seems to work okay. It's quite a simple setup, but I think this is all that this locomotive needs. So let's get the two parts back together. Okay, let's see how much this model weighs. So this model weighs 144 grams. So overall, this model from Hornby is quite an interesting steam locomotive, and it has some nice features which I quite like about it. For example, the metal buffers are quite cool. It has the metal handrail on the side, and it also has these metal whistles as well. And also the colour of this one is quite nice. I like the deep blue colour of the body, and the contrasting black and red works very well on this model. Obviously there's a couple of compromises here, and one of the things I really don't like is the big Hornby couplings, especially the one at the front, which I really think spoils the look of this locomotive. Because this is a budget model, the chassis has been used on a lot of other models, so I'm not sure if the dimensions of this one is accurate or not, and it might be more representative of this locomotive rather than accurate. I could stand corrected on that. If you know better, let me know in the comments. But it seems like a decent enough model to come in at a good price range, which will appeal to a lot of people and do great work on many different types of layout, from the smallest to the biggest. This particular model I think is probably brand new because I can't see any wear at all, either on the motor or on the wheels. So I think I've been quite lucky with that, although it does seem to be missing the extra parts I would normally expect with a Hornby model. But again, that might be because this is from the railroad range. So should you buy this particular model? I think this one has got a bit of a limited appeal because of the SDJR logo on the side of it. It's not a railway even I've heard of before, And if you were looking to buy this model, I'm sure it would come in some different colours, and there would be maybe more mainstream colours like possibly British Railways. So it seems to me like what Hornby have done here is taken an existing model and just given it a different colour in order to sell some more products. But that said, this colour combination is really quite appealing and I quite like this model. I guess it's nothing special, but it's a solid enough model. So I hope you liked looking over this locomotive as much as I liked filming it for you. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and you can subscribe for more. Let me know what you thought about my analysis in the comments below, and I'll put this on the turntable so you can see all the way around. But that's it for today. See you next time.